Okay. Hello, everyone. Hope you all are doing well. Today is 19th of May 2023, and welcome to the School of Entrepreneurship Development. Today, the special guest of our program is Marta from Germany. And yes, Marta, welcome to the today's program. And we are very excited to hear from you, from your educational background, and from yourself. So, to start our program, could you please introduce yourself and tell us more about yourself?
Yes, of course. Thanks so much for having me. And hi to everyone. Sorry, my eyes are still a bit puffy. It's 8 in the morning and I didn't sleep well last night. So my name is Marta. I'm from Germany. I live in Berlin, our capital. And I originally come from political science. That's what I studied. I worked federal government. I was a press spokesperson for Mercedes-Benz before I turned something that used to be a volunteer project into a social startup, which I'm heading now full time.
Okay, okay. So, were you involved with any kind of activities during your study, like volunteer work or business work?
Yeah, absolutely. It was in my undergrad studies while I was doing my bachelor's. I was working at a radio station, at a student radio station, because back then I was pursuing a career in journalism. I was volunteering with refugees in Germany, and I also had a couple of jobs because I needed to make money to afford university. And
Yeah.
during my master's, I was in several different societies. I was volunteering with Oxfam. I was
Oh,
in the I was in the Politics Society and International Relations, where we talk about different global political issues each week. And I was in a wakeboarding society, which is a water sport akin to water skiing, maybe you think.
okay, okay. And during these activities, like what were the skills that you developed by doing these activities?
Mhm. Um, well, the journalism work definitely helped to work in journalism, and also because later I was working with media, with the press. It's also good to understand how the other side works, right? Like if you work in journalism, it's good to understand how people think who work in PR, and if you work in PR, it's good to know how journalists think. And these are skills that also help me up till today when I run the organization, because I know how to think about like storytelling, how to do public relations for the organizations, how to make good stories, how to make good interesting news that will be interesting both for the public as well as for the media. I mean, everything along with university that we also did in the society is also good when it comes to presentation skills. Especially when you run your own business, you end up pitching your business a lot, right? So it's always good to be able to like come out with good, with like good ways to present the thoughts, the hypotheses, and the point you're trying to get across.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in the
Okay.
end, except like besides the actual skills where you learn something, I think my biggest surprise is how many paths you cross again after university, and that it's not always the people you expect to stay in touch with
Yeah.
being the ones to stay in touch with, and then some who were just very very like loose acquaintances end up being very close friends or part of your like work like professional network.
Okay. Okay. And how useful have your experiences been in your life? I mean, how did your earlier choices lead you to where you are now?
Mhm. I think this is a question that very much depends on where you are with your life right now. Like
Yeah,
if you
exactly.
find your path, if you're still not sure where it's going, it seems like it doesn't make sense. But once you are where you think you want to be or where you're happy at your point, then all of a sudden everything makes sense, right? That like everything just looks like a step that leads to where you are now. Whereas while you're still on the journey, you feel like you're all over the place and it doesn't make sense. So for me, for example, I would not have expected to be running my own social enterprise. Like that was not really ever the plan. Where while I am a person who always knew exactly like what my goals was, or like I'm very goal oriented, And then, but yes, of course, now it's very easy to look back and be like, well, it makes sense to go from journalism to working with the media for the government, and then it makes sense to go from a big company like Mercedes-Benz to know more about business to run your own company, right? So like looking back, it's easy to just say, well, that's a path and that's that led me here. But I think that's only something that you have once you are at a point where you're meant to be, and while you're still on the journey, it does look like you know where it's heading, what the direction is where you're going.
Hmm. Okay. So, uh, what was your motivation? Like, what was your courage to do all these activities?
I usually just did whatever felt like fun to me. Like on the one
Mhm.
hand, like I'm just very easily excited about stuff. And so whatever I found interesting, what made me curious, what I found exciting, I wanted to do. But I'm not going to lie. Another factor was also that I always felt a lot of pressure because I grew up with a single mom from an immigrant family. I know to
Mhm.
you, all white people look the same, but like I was
Yeah, yeah,
actually and so I had an unemployed single mom, and so I grew up in like not very good circumstances. So for me, it was also I have to do everything I can because opportunities won't just open up for me. That there's many opportunities that I will not have. So I have to
mhm.
work the hardest, do the most, and grasp any opportunity there is just to make sure that there's like if you have limited chances, you can't afford to not grasp everyone. So yeah, I always like this was also a little bit of a motivator that I always felt like I had to do more, I had to do better, I had to be everywhere and do everything.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, at the same time, I will not lie. Like I enjoyed the stuff that I did. Like most of the things that I did, I was genuinely also interested in. But I think if I had put myself under a bit less pressure, I would have not done all of them, but also allowed myself to catch a breath in between. When it comes to swans, like we will maybe talk a little bit more what exactly it is that we do. We support other women from immigrant families who attend universities or have attended universities to get the careers that they deserve because we still have a lot of sexism in this world. We still have a lot of racism, anti-Muslim racism, and
yeah,
classism, where people from lower income families, from non-academic families have it harder. So what we do is support other women who have come from these backgrounds to get the careers that they should have gotten because of their qualifications. And the motivation why I do this is because, of course, also my personal family history, but also because just like a genuine rage at inequality, like things that have been annoying me, that make me angry, that have made me sad. I think especially women oftentimes underestimate what a great motivator rage is. To be
yeah,
angry, our natural reaction to injustice. And so the angrier we get, the more we actually channel that anger into positive, constructive action. So this anger really was a great, great motivator for me about stuff that made me angry, that was just unfair. And so maybe also like if there's one thing I can tell you to take from today is like embrace your anger because it makes you so productive.
yeah, exactly. Okay, and what career mistake has given you the biggest lesson?
Ooh, mistake. That's a good.
Yeah,
I can't really. Okay, I will have to try to make something a mistake. I don't personally feel like anything was a mistake because even the stuff I ended up not liking was the way that you phrase it. You still learn something from it, right? So, for example, when you don't know which path you want to pursue, then you can try stuff, and so at least you can cross off like knowing, okay, so this is what I don't want to do. So this is the closest thing I would call a like to what I can call a mistake is I was interning at a tobacco company. I was interning at a tobacco company in their like communications department, and but it still doesn't feel like a mistake because the work that I was doing was extremely boring. Like I didn't enjoy working there at all from like the activities level from what I had to do. but the overall setup of it was super, super interesting, to see like
Yeah.
an industry that is viewed, as very problematic, that has a lot of criticism, has been facing a lot of criticism, rightfully so, for decades. How they deal with political influences, how they deal with, their own campaigns, how they frame stories. So in the end, this is the internship I talk about the most because it was the most interesting when it comes to the overall situation of like the industry. But the everyday job was very boring, and I actually quit earlier than I was supposed to. So I think that's the only one that I could like call a mistake. But even though I guess that most of the stuff, again, even if you don't enjoy it, it leads you closer to a lesson, and so it doesn't really feel like a mistake after all. Or maybe I'm just one of these people who just chooses not to regret stuff. Like sometimes you think about what could have been if you had made different choices, if you had gotten a job, taken a job, not quit a job or quit a job. But in the end, like I don't really have regrets that are worth mentioning to say like this was an actual like mistake.
Yeah. And we can learn from mistakes. Yeah.
Mm, absolutely,
And
yeah.
yeah, when we do some mistake, like a mistake should not be only a mistake, we should learn from that. And this question and the answer that you gave us reminded me one of my grandfather's advices, like which was based on his own experiences. And he always told me that when the storm's over, uh, when the storm's over, you won't remember how you survived, and you are not even sure if the storm is over. But one thing is for sure that when you come when you come out of that storm, you you're no longer the one who walk into that storm.
Oh,
So we always should learn from our mistakes.
that's very wise. Yeah, that's very nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So getting back to our questions, what do you predict will happen in the next 5 to 10 years in the field of entrepreneurship?
Mm, I mean, obviously, I can't really say like how things will develop in Bangladesh, right? Like, I can only speak from like a Eurocentristic or German specific perspective. We have two, I think, major developments. One of it is that in Europe we are not having enough babies, so like the overall population of people who join the workforce is shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And no matter how much immigrants and refugees are coming in, they cannot balance this out. Like our population, our workforce is shrinking. So the companies are struggling more and more to find not only like good workers or talented workers, just like workers, period, because there's fewer and fewer people available on the job market. And on top of that, we have more and more people of those few who are left that are willing to work in these structures. They are fed up. They are fed up with like with the traditional, with the conservative workforces, with like slow ways to rise up and get chances to pursue a career, to get responsibility. They are fed up with like strict hierarchies and like stiff work environments. So many of them, I mean, including myself, end up just starting their own businesses, right? And to become entrepreneurs because they don't want to work in these big corporations or those big companies anymore and rather do their own thing. So what I can say in Germany is that the labor force altogether is already
Excuse
drastically
me,
changed. Yeah.
uh, I cannot hear you clearly. I think there
Okay.
is a problem with your microphone.
Is it better now?
No,
Okay.
still it's like,
That's interesting. But it was better. Okay, it was okay before, right? It just changed now. Okay.
so
So
now.
you can still hear me right, right? You can still not hear me right?
Yeah, now it's okay.
Now it's okay. All right. Um, yeah, so all of this is work like changing in our workforce. and we haven't even started where like you have the generation of the so-called baby boomers that were born right after the Second World War, and they are now not, they haven't even started retiring, but they will be retiring in the next couple of years. And so the situation that I described is getting more and more like critical for the labor market. And so it's very interesting because while people still like younger generation when it comes to entrepreneurship, of course you have like the traditional, like tech bros that want to do like some disruptive technology, crypto, AI, all of that. But you have a growing group of people who are trying to start sustainable businesses, social businesses, right? Like myself, who work with
Yeah.
how to save the planet, how to save the climate, who are working with how to make society better and more just, and all of these values that they can't find in the workforce, they're trying to pursue on an entrepreneurial level. So I think this is the other thing that is moving. Like more people are becoming entrepreneurs because they're sick of the current structures when it comes to the like traditional employers and in the workforce. And the other movement is that more and more people are trying to do something purpose based, right? Something that makes the world a better place, whether from a societal perspective or from a climate perspective. And that even those who are only in for the money, who only want to make big business and just be a founder to call themselves a founder, even they will have to pretend that that's what they do. Like even if they don't genuinely perform or pursue like a just cause, they will need to pretend like there is some sort of like trying to make the world a better place, to have a compelling story for the business that they're running.
Hmm. Okay. So, can you tell us about your organization and about the impact you are creating for your community?
Yes, so yeah, as I said, we support female university students and young women from immigrant families, Black women, and women of color in all career-related topics, which means we organize different seminars on, for example, how to negotiate a salary or how to write an application, how to perform leadership in the workplace. We give them coaching, we give them different trainings, online webinars, interviews, and we provide them with a platform, with a community where they can exchange, like when they read about vacancies, about scholarships, about events, that they can inform each other, that we can inform them about the information that we have about different opportunities. And the idea is to also create a community, because the women that we support are very often they feel lonely, because they, for example, in the workplace, they might be alone amongst white people. They may be the only person from an immigrant family, the only person of color, the only Black person. But at the same time, maybe at home, they are the only ones who ever went to university, or their parents did go to university but never got to work in the field. You have many people, for example, even if they did go to university in their home countries, in Germany they end up having to clean, for example. So then you have the daughters who are like, okay, so my mom got to went to university, but she could never work in the academic field, but I did. So you no matter where you are, you always feel a little alone. And so the idea is to bring people who feel alone all the time together, so they no longer, they see that they have shared experiences, shared values, shared responsibilities that they took from a young age. For example, here, many immigrant kids, including myself, we have to translate documents for our parents from a very young age. They go to, they go to the government administration with their parents. They start interpreting from a very young age as kids. They have to go there and help the parents with the paperwork with the government. We have women who filed the taxes for their parents as children, right? And these are all responsibilities. These are all qualifications that nobody asks for, because the job market, of course, it doesn't ask about these things, because the job market is aiming at like white men from the middle and upper class. So they can't even fathom, they can't even think about things like these and to ask them. So what we try to teach the women in our network, we call them our swans, like the bird, to be proud of their accomplishments, to say, hey, I know this would have never shown up on your CV, and I know no HR person would have ever asked you about this because they come from a very, like, much more privileged world than you. But this is something you can be proud of. This is something that is actually relevant when you can come to you can work somewhere and say, I'm self-sufficient, I'm independent, I have been, responsible from a very young age. So you can actually trust me with all of these things in the workplace. And what we also do is we work with different employers, because, as I told you, like, one thing is that we are having like a demographic change in society, that we have fewer and fewer employees in the workforce general, but also more and more employers in Germany want to become more diverse. So they have to like take specific actions to hire more women, to hire more people of color, to hire more people from non-academic backgrounds. And so these employers, they come to us and they say, hey, we want to reach these people. Your community are high potentials that we would like to hire, but we can't really reach them. So can you help us? So we work with companies like, for example, like McKinsey, right? The consulting company, or with Procter and Gamble, which is one of the biggest companies in the world that produces basically everything that you have in your kitchen or in your bathroom, like toothpaste, shavers, cleaning, detergent, all of these things. Also some German companies like SAP. And so this is kind of a win-win, because the companies want to become more diverse and we support them in this. But at the same time, what we want to do is support our swans to get great jobs. So if we can bring them together with companies that have these great jobs for them, then this is exactly the mission, the purpose that we have. And so our work has been very rewarding, because, first of all, I think this is one of the most important things they tell you when starting a business, or generally in business class. What's your USP, right? What's your unique selling point? What do only you have to offer? And what we do is unique in the German speaking world. Like, no other organization, no other company, no other institution in Germany or in the German speaking countries supports this very exact target demographic. So far, we're the only ones. And so it's been a very grateful situation to have an idea that is so unique, and so, for Germany. Again, in other parts of the world, of course, they have it. But at the same time, we profit greatly from a shift in the zeitgeist. Like, what we do a couple of years before we did it would not have been as successful as it is now, because so much is changing in German society and German mentality. So I think it's always interesting to see how other people have been working for the same causes, been interesting in the same missions, maybe for decades, sometimes for generations. But then maybe you're just lucky that you just start the right thing in just the moment when it's easier to climb, when it's easier to make it somewhere with it. And so it's been a lot of fun. It's very, like, going very well. But I think this is not only because it's a great idea and because I'm very good at what I do, but it's also that I'm profiting from an atmosphere in society that is ready for the idea, that is ready to do something, and that is like, how do you say, welcoming me with open arms, rather than me having to like fight my way through walls.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Uh, what kind of skills, like, what kind of skills our new generation need to get a good job?
What kind of skills do you need?
Yeah.
Mhm.
What do you think about that?
Mhm. Okay, I think the most important thing is actually just being reliable. Like, I underestimated very much how unreliable people are and how easy it is to stand out. The world makes it very easy for you to stand out if you reply on time to messages and to emails, and that when you do say you'll do something, that you'll actually do it.
Yeah.
Have you heard of the imposter syndrome?
No.
Okay, imposter syndrome is a feeling when you are in a room, for example, at university or at an internship or in a lab at work, and you feel like you don't deserve to be there. Like, you feel
Yeah.
like you took your way into this room, and that you don't
Yeah.
actually should be there, and that the world will find out and kick you out. Like it's just a
Yeah,
matter of
yeah, exactly.
okay. So this feeling is called imposter syndrome. Many people say that it's something that mostly affects women, which is true, but also not the complete story, because actually imposter syndrome applies to people who are in a room where they are in the minority. So for example, if you're a woman in a male dominated field, that happens to you. If you're a person of color in a room full of white people, that happens to you. If you're a lower class person with a lower level of education amongst university people, that happens to you. And so imposter syndrome is a very big topic that we have at Swans with our community, that they always feel like they don't deserve to be where they are, even though they deserve it so much because they usually work 3 times as hard as the other people. And so the story that I always tell is how I overcame my imposter syndrome. It's when I went places and I realized how stupid and lazy everybody else was. Like I was sitting there, I'm like, if you got here and this is all you have to offer, that actually not only makes me feel more confident in what I have to offer, it actually makes me angry because I start thinking about how far I could have come if I had had the same starting situation as you, that you get to be so lazy and so bad at your job, and I work so hard all my life just to get maybe here. If you're lucky, you get the same, right? Like many people end
Yeah,
up here even though they work much harder. And so this is actually something that I found so fascinating again and again. How many people get to be lazy? How many people get to be unreliable, to be sloppy in their work? And how easy it is to stand out by just being reliable, by just replying on time, by being like detail oriented with your work. Stuff that I always thought was like, of course, we all have to do this, but it's not. And anything else than that, you can learn. Like the thing for me is like I have zero business background. I never, I studied political science to avoid anything that has to do with numbers. And every day when running my company, I'm like, okay, first of all, there's so many idiots out there who somehow manage to run a business, so it can't be that hard. And on the other hand, all the stuff, I don't need to know everything. My grandma has this beautiful thing where she says, you don't need to be good at everything because nobody's going to appreciate it anyway. And I think I love it because it's like such a fun way to be like, it's all right not to know everything. It's all right not to be able to do anything. And for example, my most important lesson for business was that all of my friends who did go to business school, they can't help me either with that stuff. They don't know how to file the taxes stuff. They don't know how to deal with all of the legal issues anyway. And they cannot even help me write the paperwork. So the only thing from a business perspective I learned you need to have is a really good tax attorney, right? You just need one good CPA to do your tax stuff for you and your how do you call it, your accounting and your taxing, right? And everything else, like we learn as we go. I think like the weird thing for me is like I'm 33 now. So the weirdest lesson for me is that all of the like old people's sayings that were always annoying are actually true. Like, for example, the whole idea fake it until you make it, it turns nobody knows what they're doing. Like, really, nobody knows what they're doing. And we're just
yeah,
all figuring it out as we go. And every time we do it right, then we're glad. And if we do it wrong, then we're like, well, great, we learned something. Now we know. And every time, of course, I prefer learning from other people's mistake. Like, I don't feel like I have to make every mistake myself in order to learn the lesson. But at the same time, that's how we learn. We get screwed over by people, and that's how we don't get screwed over when we're older. We do something stupid and we don't do it again. And this is what the whole you'll understand it when you're older. And this is what, like, this is how life experience in the end works. And for me, it's so frustrating because they've been telling us since we were children, right? Like, it's so annoying because the old people have been saying this all the time. And now just admitting to myself that they were right is really annoying.
yeah. Okay, and it's almost the end of the session. So, and our last question is this: that do you have any advice for our new generation to develop their professional career or to their to develop their skills?
Whew, I have to think, because one of the things that make me very angry is when people give advice and they pretend like it applies to everywhere in the planet, but it doesn't, because we all have different circumstances, we all have different, life situations. So I
Yeah.
think that I can only say is allow yourself to chill in between. I know we feel like no matter how hard we work, it feels like we never do enough. We feel like we're lazy if we grant ourselves a little break in between because our body is near shutdown. And I'm sure you all feel it too. It's like no, you work yourself broke down, like you have zero energy left, but you still feel guilty, like you still feel like you're not doing enough. So I know, especially when you're still in university, you feel like you have to prove everything to the world. You have to take and bring in everything in to have, to make it happen. Allow yourself to take a breath in between. Allow yourself to like chill. I had several people, we had the same conversation where I said, if you don't take the break yourself, the body will take that break for you. And this break will be
Wow.
much longer. So if you think I can't afford to take a break because I won't be able to work enough, once your body makes that decision for you, you won't be able to work for much longer. And I've had people, so many people in my personal surroundings that were dealing with panic attacks, with depression, that had that like the spine, where the disc was slit, where they ended up in the hospital for months. So allow yourself to recharge your batteries every once in a while. Allow yourself, make the decision to calm down in between so you have more energy afterwards.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your amazing experiences. Uh, it was really nice, and actually, I learned so many things, and I hope, um, yeah, I can use from your experiences, and also others.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. And everybody, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or write me and add me and everything. I'll always be happy to help. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, have a good time.